This is the story of Ben Carter, a man whose hands were calloused from years of honest labor, whose spirit remained unbroken despite the weight of invisibility, and whose heart held a wealth that no amount of money could ever match. It's a narrative that will challenge your perceptions, ignite your emotions, and perhaps even inspire you to look at the world around you with new eyes. Before we continue, leave a comment below telling me where you're watching this video from. I'd love to know. As we delve into Ben's extraordinary journey, you'll find yourself questioning the very foundations of success and power. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and you'll be on the edge of your seat as you witness the transformation of a simple janitor into a beacon of hope for an entire community. But more than that, you'll be reminded of the incredible potential that lies within each of us, waiting to be awakened by the right circumstances or the faith of a single person who sees beyond the surface. So sit back, open your mind, and prepare to be captivated by a story that proves that sometimes the most powerful changes come from the most unexpected places. Welcome to the world of the invisible heir, a tale that will stay with you long after the last word is spoken. In the pulsing heart of New York City, where dreams are born and shattered with equal ferocity, stood a monument to corporate might. The Reed Industries building pierced the sky, its gleaming facade a testament to the power and influence wielded by those within. But as the sun dipped below the horizon, and the city's ceaseless hum softened to a whisper, a different kind of power moved through the building's halls. Ben Carter, a man of 45 years with salt and pepper hair and eyes that spoke of quiet determination, pushed his cleaning cart with practiced ease. The soft squeak of its wheels was a familiar melody, accompanying him on his nightly rounds. To the few employees burning the midnight oil, Ben was little more than a shadow, a fleeting presence noticed only when a trash can needed emptying, or a coffee stain threatened to mar an otherwise pristine carpet. But Ben was far more than the uniform he wore or the tasks he performed. Behind his stoic exterior lay a mind as sharp as any executive's, and a heart that held more kindness than most would ever know. As he moved from floor to floor, Ben absorbed the ebb and flow of the corporate world around him. He knew the rhythms of the office, the whispered conversations, the triumphs and failures that played out day after day. On this particular evening, as rain pelted against the windows and turned the city into a shimmering tapestry of lights, Ben found himself on the top floor. The executive suites were a world apart from the bustling lower levels. Here, thick carpets muffled his footsteps, and the air hung heavy with the scent of leather and success. As Ben carefully polished the nameplate on the CEO's door, Walter Reed etched in gold, he heard a soft cough from within. Concern furrowed his brow. It was well past 9 o'clock, an unusual hour for the company's leader to still be at his desk. Knocking gently, Ben called out, "Mr. Reed, is everything all right, sir?" A moment passed before a weary voice responded, "Come in, please." Ben entered the spacious office, his eyes immediately drawn to the figure slumped behind the massive oak desk. Walter Reed, once a titan of industry whose very presence commanded respect, now looked frail and diminished. His silver hair was disheveled, and deep lines of exhaustion etched his face. "Ah, Ben," Walter said, a wan smile lifting the corners of his mouth. "I should have known it would be you. Always the last one here, aren't you?" Ben moved closer, concern evident in his voice. "Are you feeling unwell, Mr. Reed? Can I get you anything?" Walter waved a hand dismissively, but the gesture lacked its usual authority. No, I'm just tired. Very tired." He looked up at Ben, his gaze sharpening. "Tell me, Ben, how long have you been with us now?" 23 years this August, sir," Ben replied without hesitation. Walter nodded slowly, as if confirming something to himself. 23 years. And in all that time, have you ever once complained about your job, asked for a raise, demanded better treatment? Ben shifted uncomfortably, unused to such direct questions from the CEO. No, sir. I'm grateful for my job. It's allowed me to provide for my family, to put my daughter through college. That's more than enough for me. A look of profound sadness passed over Walter's face. More than enough, he repeated softly. Do you know, Ben, how rare that attitude is in this building, in this entire city? Before Ben could respond, Walter continued, his voice taking on a confessional tone. I built this company from nothing, poured my heart and soul into it. And for what? To watch it become a playground for the greedy and the ambitious? He shook his head, disgust evident in his expression. My own children see me as nothing more than a bank account with a pulse. My executives circle like vultures, waiting for me to stumble so they can pick my legacy clean. Ben listened in silence, unsure of how to respond to such raw honesty from a man he had always seen as untouchable. Walter's gaze locked onto Ben's, a fierce intensity burning in his eyes. But you, Ben, you've been here all along, haven't you? Watching, listening, understanding more than anyone realizes. Tell me, what do you see when you look at this company? Taken aback by the question, Ben hesitated before answering carefully. I see potential, sir. Potential to do good, to make a difference. But I also see fear, people afraid to speak up, afraid to rock the boat. They forget that a company is more than just profits and stock prices. It's about people, about community. Walter leaned back in his chair, a look of wonder spreading across his face. Exactly, he whispered. Exactly right. The moment was interrupted by a fit of coughing that shook Walter's frame. Ben rushed to his side, supporting the older man until the spell passed. Thank you, Ben, Walter said weakly. I think I'd like to go home now. As Ben helped Walter gather his things and called for his driver, neither man could have known that this simple act of kindness would set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of Reed Industries and change both their lives forever. Outside, the rain continued to fall, washing the city clean, preparing it for a new day and the remarkable story that was about to unfold. The following weeks saw a subtle shift in the atmosphere at Reed Industries. Rumors swirled through the building like leaves caught in an autumn breeze, whispers of Walter Reed's declining health and hushed speculation about the future of the company. In the executive suites, a palpable tension hung in the air, a mixture of anticipation and anxiety that set nerves on edge and sharpened ambitions to a razor's edge. For Ben Carter, life continued much as it always had. He arrived each evening as the day shift departed, a changing of the guard that went largely unnoticed by those who occupied the building during daylight hours. But Ben's keen eyes and attentive ears missed little, and he couldn't help but notice the increased frequency of late-night meetings in the boardroom, the harried expressions on executives' faces as they hurried through the halls. One such evening, as Ben was carefully dusting the frames that lined the hallway outside the boardroom, each one showcasing a moment of triumph in Reed Industries' history, he overheard raised voices from within. We need to act now, before it's too late. The voice belonged to Alexander Reed, Walter's eldest son, and the company's chief financial officer. Father's health is failing, and we can't risk him making any rash decisions in his weakened state. Calm down, Alex, a smoother, more measured voice responded. Ben recognized it as belonging to Victoria Hartley, the head of legal affairs. Your father may be ill, but he's far from incompetent. Any attempt to wrest control now would be seen as a coup. We need to be patient, play the long game. Patient? Alexander's voice dripped with scorn. While we wait, He could be rewriting his will, leaving everything to some charity or, I don't know, the janitor. Ben froze, his hand suspended in midair as he reached for another frame. The idea was so preposterous that under different circumstances he might have laughed. Instead, a chill ran down his spine. "Don't be ridiculous," Victoria chided. "Walter may be sentimental, but he's not a fool. The company will pass to you and your siblings, as it always should. Our job is to ensure that when that happens, we're in a position to guide your hand. For the good of Reed Industries, of course." The conversation continued, but Ben had heard enough. He quietly gathered his cleaning supplies and moved on, his mind whirling with the implications of what he'd overheard. He had always known that the corporate world could be cutthroat, but to hear Walter Reed's own son plotting against him, it made Ben's heart heavy. As he continued his rounds, Ben found himself outside Walter's office once again. A soft light spilled from beneath the door, and Ben could hear the muffled sound of papers being shuffled. Concerned, he knocked gently. "Come in," Walter's voice called, sounding stronger than it had in weeks. Ben entered to find Walter hunched over his desk, surrounded by stacks of documents. The older man looked up, a spark of his old fire in his eyes. "Ah, Ben, just the man I wanted to see." Surprised, Ben stepped further into the room. "Is everything all right, Mr. Reed? Can I get you anything?" Walter shook his head, a wry smile playing at his lips. No. I'm quite all right. In fact, I'm better than I've been in years." He gestured to the chair across from his desk. "Sit down, Ben. I'd like to talk to you." Hesitantly, Ben lowered himself into the plush leather chair, feeling out of place in his janitor's uniform. Walter leaned forward, his gaze intense. "Ben, I've been doing a lot of thinking lately. About my life, about this company, about the legacy I'll leave behind." He paused, seeming to weigh his next words carefully. "I've come to a decision, one that I think will shock a lot of people. But before I move forward, I want to ask you something." Ben nodded, unsure of where this conversation was heading, but willing to listen. "If you had the power to change things, to make a real difference in people's lives, would you do it? Even if it meant stepping far outside your comfort zone, taking on responsibilities you never imagined?" The question hung in the air between them, laden with meaning that Ben couldn't quite grasp. He thought of his daughter, working 2 jobs to make ends meet despite her college degree. He thought of his neighbors, good people struggling under the weight of a system that seemed designed to keep them down. He thought of the countless faces he saw each night, stressed and exhausted, pouring their lives into a company that saw them as little more than cogs in a machine. "Yes," Ben said finally, his voice quiet but firm. "Yes, I would." Walter's face broke into a wide smile, years seeming to fall away from him in an instant. "I thought you might say that," he said, reaching for a thick envelope on his desk. "Ben, I want you to take this home with you tonight. Read it carefully. It will explain everything." As Ben left the office that night, the envelope tucked safely in his jacket, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. Little did he know that across the city, in a luxurious penthouse apartment, Alexander Reed was placing a call to his lawyers, setting in motion a plan that would pit son against father in a battle for the very soul of Reed Industries. The stage was set, the players were moving into position, and at the center of it all was Ben Carter, a simple janitor about to be thrust into a world he never knew existed. The following morning dawned crisp and clear, a rarity in the typically smoggy New York skyline. For Ben Carter, however, the beauty of the day went unnoticed. He sat at his small kitchen table, the contents of Walter Reed's envelope spread before him, his mind reeling from what he had read. The documents detailed a plan so audacious, so completely unexpected, that Ben had read them 3 times just to be sure he wasn't misunderstanding. Walter Reed, billionaire CEO of Reed Industries, was planning to leave his entire fortune, including control of the company, to Ben Carter, the night janitor. As the implications began to sink in, Ben's hands trembled. This had to be a mistake, some sort of elaborate joke or test. How could he, a man who had spent his life cleaning up after others, possibly be expected to run a multinational corporation? But as he read Walter's personal letter again, the sincerity in the words was unmistakable. Walter spoke of his disillusionment with the greed and callousness he had seen in his own children and executives. He praised Ben's work ethic, his integrity, and his understanding of what truly mattered in life. Most importantly, Walter expressed his belief that Ben, with his outsider's perspective and genuine care for others, could guide Reed Industries towards a future that prioritized people over profits. The weight of responsibility settled on Ben's shoulders like a physical thing. He thought of his daughter, Sarah, working long hours at a thankless job. He thought of his late wife, Margaret, and how proud she would have been to see him given this opportunity. And he thought of all the employees at Reed Industries, from the lowest-level workers to the top executives, whose lives would be affected by his decisions. As the sun climbed higher in the sky, Ben made a decision. He would accept Walter's offer, not for the money or the power, but for the chance to make a real difference in the world. With a deep breath, he picked up the phone to call the number Walter had provided, setting in motion a chain of events that would rock the corporate world to its core. Across town, in the opulent offices of Reed Industries, a very different scene was unfolding. Alexander Reed paced the length of the boardroom, his expensive shoes clicking against the polished floor as he addressed the assembled executives. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice tight with barely contained anger, "we have a situation. My father," he spat the word as if it left a bad taste in his mouth, "has apparently lost his mind. Our sources within his legal team inform me that he's planning to change his will, cutting us out entirely." A murmur of shock and outrage rippled through the room. Victoria Hartley, her usual composure slipping, spoke up. "But that's impossible. The company bylaws, the shareholders, they'd never allow it." Alexander's laugh was bitter. "Oh, it gets better. Do you want to know who he's planning to leave everything to? The janitor. That's right. The man who cleans our toilets might soon be sitting in the CEO's chair." The room erupted into chaos, executives talking over one another in a cacophony of disbelief and indignation. Alexander raised his hands, calling for silence. I know, it's insane. But we can't afford to underestimate my father's stubbornness. We need to act now, before this becomes official. I've already contacted our lawyers. We're going to challenge this on grounds of mental incompetence. In the meantime, I want every bit of dirt we can find on this janitor. If my father wants to play games, we'll show him just how ruthless we can be." As the meeting adjourned, the executives filed out with grim determination. None of them noticed the young intern, wide-eyed and pale, who had overheard everything from her position by the coffee machine. Meanwhile, in a modest law office downtown, Ben Carter sat across from Walter Reed's personal attorney, a kind-faced woman named Eleanor Simmons. She smiled warmly at Ben, recognizing his overwhelmed expression. "I know this is a lot to take in, Mr. Carter," she said gently. "But I want you to know that Walter didn't make this decision lightly. He's been watching you for years, impressed by your work ethic and your kindness to others. He believes you have the integrity and vision to lead Reed Industries into a new era." Ben nodded slowly, still struggling to find words. It's so much responsibility," he finally managed. "I'm not sure I'm qualified for this. I've never even run a small business, let alone a multinational corporation." Eleanor leaned forward, her eyes kind but determined. "Walter anticipated your doubts, Mr. Carter. That's why he's arranged for a transition period. You'll have access to the best advisors in the business, and Walter himself will mentor you as long as his health allows. But more importantly, he believes that your unique perspective, your understanding of the everyday workers who are the backbone of this company, is exactly what Reed Industries needs. As Ben absorbed this information, a knock at the door interrupted them. Eleanor's assistant poked her head in, her expression urgent. "I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's a situation developing at Reed Industries. Alexander Reed is calling an emergency board meeting. He's challenging the will." Eleanor's face hardened. "So it begins," she muttered, then turned back to Ben. "Mr. Carter, I'm afraid things are about to get very complicated. Are you ready for this fight?" Ben took a deep breath, thinking of Walter's faith in him, of the workers at Reed Industries who deserved better, of his own family, and the difference this could make in their lives. He met Eleanor's gaze steadily. "I'm ready," he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "Tell me what we need to do." As Eleanor began outlining their strategy, Ben felt a strange mix of fear and determination settling in his chest. He knew the road ahead would be difficult, filled with challenges he could scarcely imagine. But he also knew that this was a chance to make a real difference, to prove that integrity and compassion had a place in the corporate world. Outside the window, the New York skyline stretched towards the clouds, a concrete jungle where dreams were made and broken every day. But today, in this small office, a new dream was taking shape, one that would shake the very foundations of that skyline and change the lives of thousands. The battle for Reed Industries was about to begin, and at its center stood Ben Carter, the invisible man who was about to become the most talked-about figure in the business world. The news of Walter Reed's decision spread through Reed Industries like wildfire, igniting a firestorm of reactions that ranged from disbelief to outrage to cautious hope. For the rank-and-file employees, the idea that one of their own, a night janitor no less, might soon be at the helm of the company was nothing short of revolutionary. In the company cafeteria, hushed conversations buzzed around every table. Jenna Martinez, a mid-level accountant, leaned in close to her colleagues. "Can you believe it?" she whispered excitedly. I've seen Ben around for years. He's always been so kind, so hardworking. Maybe this is exactly what the company needs." Across the table, Mark Chen, an IT specialist, nodded in agreement. "I've heard stories about him staying late to help people who were working overtime, even though it wasn't his job. That's the kind of leadership we've been missing." But not everyone shared their optimism. At a corner table, a group of junior executives huddled together, their faces dark with concern. "This is a disaster," hissed Trevor Blackwell, his perfectly tailored suit a stark contrast to his disheveled hair. "How are we supposed to explain this to our clients? Our stock prices will plummet." As the day wore on, the atmosphere in the building grew increasingly tense. Security guards were posted at every entrance, their watchful eyes scanning for any sign of the man at the center of the storm. But Ben Carter was nowhere to be found. In fact, at that very moment, Ben was sequestered in Eleanor Simmons' law office, receiving a crash course in corporate law, finance, and the inner workings of Reed Industries. His head spun with information, profit margins, quarterly reports, shareholder meetings. But he forced himself to focus, knowing that the challenges ahead would require every ounce of knowledge he could absorb. "The most important thing to remember," Eleanor was saying, her voice steady and reassuring, "is that you don't have to do this alone. Walter has put together a team of advisors, people he trusts implicitly, to help you navigate these waters. Your job is to be the moral compass, to make the big picture decisions that will shape the future of the company." Ben nodded, grateful for the guidance but still overwhelmed by the magnitude of what lay ahead. "And what about Alexander?" he asked, voicing the concern that had been nagging at him. How do we handle his challenge to the will? Eleanor's expression turned grim. That's going to be our first major battle. Alexander is claiming that Walter is mentally unfit to make this decision. We'll need to prove otherwise, which means we'll need Walter's cooperation. As if on cue, Eleanor's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her eyebrows rising in surprise. "Speak of the devil," she murmured, then looked up at Ben. "It's Walter. He wants to see you. Now." Across town, in the penthouse suite of a luxury hotel, Walter Reed sat propped up in bed, surrounded by medical equipment and grim-faced doctors. Despite his frail appearance, his eyes burned with the same intensity that had made him a titan of industry. When Ben entered the room, Walter's face lit up with a smile. "Ben," he said, his voice weak but warm, "I'm so glad you're here. We have much to discuss, and I fear little time to do it." Ben approached the bed, his heart heavy at seeing the once powerful man reduced to this. "Mr. Reed," he began, but Walter cut him off with a wave of his hand. "Walter, please. I think we're well past formalities at this point, don't you?" He gestured for Ben to sit in the chair beside the bed. "I know you must have 1,000 questions, doubts, fears. But before we get into all that, I want you to understand why I chose you." Walter's gaze turned distant, as if looking back through the years. "When I started this company, I had a vision, not just of success and profit, but of creating something that would make the world a little bit better. Somewhere along the way, I lost sight of that. I let greed and ambition cloud my judgment, and I watched as the company I built became something I no longer recognized." He turned back to Ben, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "But you, Ben, you reminded me of what's truly important. Your kindness, your integrity, your genuine care for others. These are the qualities that should be at the heart of every business decision. I'm giving you Reed Industries not because I think you know how to run a company, but because I know you'll learn how to run it right." Ben felt a lump forming in his throat, moved by Walter's words and the trust they implied. "I'll do my best," he promised softly. "I won't let you down." Walter smiled, reaching out to clasp Ben's hand. "I know you won't. Now let's talk strategy. Alexander won't give up easily, and there are others within the company who will resist this change. You'll need to be strong, Ben. Stronger than you've ever been." As the two men began to plan, neither of them noticed the figure lurking in the shadows of the hotel corridor. Alexander Reed pressed his ear to the door, his face contorted with rage as he listened to his father and the janitor plotting the future of his birthright. "Enjoy it while you can, old man," he muttered under his breath. "This isn't over, not by a long shot." In the coming days, the battle for Reed Industries would explode into the public eye, captivating the nation and forcing Ben Carter into a spotlight he never sought. But for now, in that quiet hotel room, a torch was being passed, from a man who had built an empire to one who had spent his life in its shadows. The Invisible Man was about to step into the light, and the world would never be the same. The following week unfolded like a fever dream for Ben Carter. Each morning, he would wake up in his modest apartment, half convinced that the events of the past few days had been nothing more than an elaborate fantasy. But then his phone would buzz with messages from Eleanor, updates on the legal battle that was rapidly becoming the talk of the business world, and reality would come crashing back. On Monday morning, Ben found himself standing in front of his bathroom mirror, adjusting a tie that cost more than his monthly rent. Eleanor had insisted on getting him a new wardrobe, arguing that appearance would matter in the days to come. As he stared at his reflection, Ben barely recognized himself. The janitor's uniform that had been his second skin for so many years was gone, replaced by a tailored suit that felt like a costume. "You can do this," he told his reflection, trying to summon the confidence he desperately needed. For Walter, for the workers, for yourself. The drive to Reed Industries headquarters was a blur of nervous anticipation. As the car pulled up to the imposing glass and steel structure, Ben's heart raced. This building, which he had cleaned and cared for in the quiet hours of the night for over 2 decades, now loomed before him like a mountain to be conquered. In the lobby, a hush fell over the bustling crowd as Ben walked in. Employees stopped in their tracks, conversations dying mid-sentence as all eyes turned to the man who might soon be their new CEO. Ben felt the weight of their stares, a mix of curiosity, hope, and skepticism that threatened to overwhelm him. But then, from the crowd, a voice called out, "Good luck, Mr. Carter." Ben turned to see Jenna Martinez, the accountant he had often chatted with during his night shifts, giving him an encouraging smile. Her words seemed to break a spell, and suddenly others were joining in, offering words of support and encouragement. As Ben made his way to the elevator, flanked by Eleanor and a team of security guards, he felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could do this. The executive floor was a different story entirely. As the elevator doors opened, Ben was met with a wall of icy stares from the assembled executives. At the head of the group stood Alexander Reed, his handsome face twisted into a sneer of contempt. "Well, well," Alexander drawled, his voice dripping with sarcasm, "if it isn't the man of the hour. Tell me, Carter, do you even know how to read a financial statement? Or were you planning on mopping your way to success?" Ben felt a flash of anger, but Eleanor's steadying hand on his arm kept him calm. He met Alexander's gaze levelly, remembering Walter's words about strength. "I may not know everything about running a company yet, Mr. Reed," he said, his voice quiet but firm. "But I do know the value of hard work and treating people with respect. Something you might want to consider." A ripple of surprise ran through the assembled executives. They had expected the janitor to cower, to be overwhelmed by their world. Instead, they saw a man standing his ground, unafraid and unapologetic. Before Alexander could retort, the boardroom doors swung open, revealing Walter Reed seated at the head of the table. Despite his frail appearance, his presence filled the room, commanding attention and respect. "Gentlemen, ladies," Walter said, his voice stronger than it had been in weeks, "I believe we have a meeting to attend. Shall we begin?" As everyone filed into the boardroom, Ben took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would determine the future of Reed Industries and the lives of thousands of employees. He thought of his daughter Sarah, of Jenna Martinez and all the other workers who had placed their hope in him. He thought of Walter, who had seen something in him that Ben himself was only beginning to understand. With a silent prayer, Ben Carter stepped into the boardroom, ready to fight for a vision of business that put people before profits, integrity before greed. The battle for the soul of Reed Industries was about to begin, and the outcome would send shockwaves through the corporate world. As the doors closed behind him, Ben couldn't help but feel that he was stepping not just into a new role, but into a new chapter of his life, one that would test him in ways he had never imagined and potentially change the face of corporate America forever. The tension in the Reed Industries boardroom was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. Ben Carter, still adjusting to the feel of his new suit, sat at one end of the long mahogany table, flanked by Eleanor Simmons and a team of lawyers. Opposite him, Alexander Reed glowered, surrounded by his own legal team and supporters. At the head of the table, Walter Reed called the meeting to order, his voice carrying a strength that belied his frail appearance. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we are here today to address the future of Reed Industries. As you all know, I have made the decision to name Ben Carter as my successor and heir to the company." A murmur rippled through the room, but Walter pressed on. "I understand that this decision has come as a shock to many of you. Some of you," he said, his gaze falling pointedly on Alexander, have even questioned my mental competence in making this choice. So let me be clear. I am of sound mind, and this decision is final." Alexander leapt to his feet, his face flushed with anger. "This is absurd, Father. You can't seriously expect us to believe that you're handing over a multi-billion-dollar company to a janitor. He has no experience, no education in business. He'll run this company into the ground." Ben felt all eyes turn to him, waiting for his response. For a moment, the enormity of the situation threatened to overwhelm him. But then he remembered all the nights he had spent in this building, listening to the dreams and frustrations of employees at every level. He thought of the cleaning staff, the security guards, the administrative assistants, all the invisible workers who kept Reed Industries running smoothly day after day. Taking a deep breath, Ben stood, meeting Alexander's gaze steadily. "You're right, Mr. Reed. I don't have an MBA. I've never sat in a boardroom until today. But I do have something that I think this company needs more than ever: perspective." He turned, addressing the entire room. "For 23 years, I've watched this company grow. I've seen the toll that long hours and cutthroat policies take on the workers. I've also seen the incredible potential that exists when people are treated with respect and given the chance to thrive." Ben's voice grew stronger as he continued, fueled by a passion he hadn't known he possessed. "Reed Industries has the power to be more than just another profit-driven corporation. We can be a force for good in the world, leading by example and showing that it's possible to be successful while still prioritizing the well-being of our employees and the communities we serve." A hushed silence fell over the room as Ben's words sank in. Even Alexander seemed momentarily at a loss for words. Walter, his eyes shining with pride, nodded encouragingly for Ben to continue. "I may not know everything about running a company yet," Ben admitted, "but I'm willing to learn. More importantly, I'm willing to listen to the experts in this room, to our employees at every level, and to the communities we impact. Together we can build a Reed Industries that not only leads in profits, but in ethics and innovation as well." As Ben finished speaking, he became aware of a sound he hadn't expected: applause. It started softly, with just a few hands, but quickly grew. Several board members were nodding thoughtfully, clearly impressed by Ben's sincerity and vision. Alexander, however, was far from convinced. "Pretty words," he spat, "but they don't change the fact that you're completely unqualified for this position. The shareholders will never stand for this." Walter raised a hand, silencing the room once more. "That's where you're wrong, son. I've already spoken with our major shareholders. While some were initially skeptical, they've agreed to give Ben a chance. They see the potential for positive change, for a new direction that could set Reed Industries apart in an increasingly socially conscious market." Alexander's face paled as he realized the extent of his father's preparations. "This isn't over," he hissed, gathering his papers. "I'll fight this in court if I have to." As Alexander stormed out of the room, followed by a handful of executives, Walter turned to Ben with a tired but triumphant smile. "Well done, my boy. But remember, this is just the beginning. The real work starts now." Ben nodded, feeling a mix of exhilaration and terror at the challenges that lay ahead. He knew that winning over the board was just the first step. He would need to prove himself not just to the executives and shareholders, but to every employee of Reed Industries. As the meeting adjourned and people began to file out, offering congratulations or wary glances, Ben found himself standing alone at the window. The New York skyline stretched out before him, a concrete jungle of possibilities and pitfalls. He placed his hand against the cool glass, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. "I won't let you down," he whispered, a promise to Walter, to the company, and to himself. "We're going to change things. For the better." Little did Ben know that across town, Alexander Reed was already setting in motion a plan that would test his resolve, and the very future of Reed Industries. In a dimly lit bar, Alexander met with a group of disgruntled executives and shareholders, their faces etched with determination and greed. "Gentlemen," Alexander said, his voice low and intense, "we may have lost this battle, but the war is far from over. My father and this janitor think they can revolutionize our company with their naive idealism. We're going to show them just how ruthless the business world can be." As the group leaned in, Alexander outlined a scheme designed to undermine Ben's leadership and force him out of the company. Little did they know that their machinations would set the stage for a corporate drama that would captivate the nation and redefine the very essence of business ethics. The months that followed Ben's appointment as CEO of Reed Industries were a whirlwind of challenges, triumphs, and hard-learned lessons. Each day brought new tests of his resolve and his vision for the company. Ben's first major initiative was to implement a company-wide minimum wage increase, ensuring that even the lowest-paid employees could afford a decent standard of living. The move was met with resistance from some shareholders who feared it would eat into profits, but Ben stood firm. "We're not just investing in our employees," he argued during a tense board meeting. "We're investing in our future. Happy, secure workers are more productive, more loyal, and more innovative. This isn't just the right thing to do morally, it's smart business." To everyone's surprise, the policy was a resounding success. Employee morale soared, productivity increased, and Reed Industries began to attract top talent from competitors. The positive press coverage didn't hurt either, with the company being hailed as a pioneer in corporate responsibility. But not everyone was celebrating Ben's early wins. Alexander Reed and his allies worked tirelessly behind the scenes, spreading rumors, leaking misleading information to the press, and attempting to sow discord among the employees. Their efforts came to a head when a major project, one that Ben had championed as part of his vision for a more sustainable and ethical Reed Industries, hit a serious snag. Cost overruns and technical difficulties threatened to derail the initiative, and Alexander seized the opportunity to call for a vote of no confidence in Ben's leadership. The night before the crucial board meeting, Ben found himself back in the familiar corridors of Reed Industries, this time not as a janitor, but as a leader fighting for the soul of the company. As he walked the halls lost in thought, he encountered Maria, one of the cleaning staff he had worked alongside for years. "Mr. Carter," she said, surprise evident in her voice. "What are you doing here so late?" Ben smiled tiredly. "Just thinking, Maria. Tomorrow's going to be a big day." Maria nodded, understanding in her eyes. "We're all rooting for you, you know. What you've done for us, for all the workers here, it's made a real difference." Her words struck a chord in Ben, reminding him of why he had taken on this challenge in the first place. He thanked her and continued his walk, his resolve strengthened. The next day, as Ben faced the board and shareholders, he didn't just defend his decisions. He painted a vision of what Reed Industries could become. He spoke of a company that led not just in profits, but in innovation, sustainability, and social responsibility. He showed how their ethical initiatives had already begun to pay dividends, attracting new customers and partners who shared their values. "We stand at a crossroads," Ben concluded, his voice ringing with passion. "We can choose to retreat into the old ways of doing business, prioritizing short-term gains over long-term sustainability. Or we can forge a new path, one that proves that a company can be profitable and ethical, successful and compassionate. I believe in this vision. I believe in Reed Industries, and I'm asking you to believe too." The room was silent for a moment after Ben finished speaking. Then slowly, applause began to build. Board members and shareholders who had been skeptical were nodding, convinced by Ben's sincerity and the tangible results he had already achieved. When the vote was called, it was decisively in Ben's favor. Alexander stormed out of the room, his face a mask of fury. but Ben barely noticed. He was too busy accepting congratulations and already thinking about the next steps in Reed Industries' transformation. 5 years passed, and Reed Industries underwent a remarkable transformation. Under Ben's leadership, the company became known not just for its financial success, but for its groundbreaking policies on workers' rights, environmental sustainability, and community engagement. The company's profits soared as consumers and clients alike were drawn to its ethical practices and innovative products. Reed Industries was featured in business school case studies, held up as an example of how companies could thrive in the 21st century by prioritizing more than just the bottom line. Ben Carter, once an invisible janitor, was now a respected figure in the business world, sought after for his insights on corporate responsibility and ethical leadership. But he never forgot where he came from. He made it a point to know the names of the cleaning staff, the security guards, the cafeteria workers, all the invisible people who kept the company running smoothly. On the 5th anniversary of his appointment as CEO, Ben stood in front of Reed Industries headquarters, preparing to unveil a new initiative, the Walter Reed Foundation, dedicated to providing educational opportunities and support for low-income workers looking to advance their careers. As he addressed the crowd of employees, journalists, and community members, Ben caught sight of a familiar face in the audience. Sarah, his daughter, stood beaming with pride, her own young daughter perched on her hip. Beside her was Maria, the cleaning lady who had offered him encouragement on that crucial night 5 years ago. They were surrounded by a sea of faces, all people whose lives had been touched and improved by the changes at Reed Industries. "When I started this journey," Ben said, his voice thick with emotion, "I was just a janitor with a dream of making things better. I didn't know much about running a company, but I knew about people. I knew about hard work, about struggle, about hoping for a better future." He paused, looking out over the crowd. Today, Reed Industries stands as proof that a company can be a force for good in the world, that we can pursue profit without losing our humanity, that the strongest foundations are built not on greed, but on respect, integrity, and compassion. As the crowd erupted in applause, Ben felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had taken an unexpected path, faced countless challenges, and emerged not just successful, but fulfilled. He had changed Reed Industries, yes, but more importantly, he had shown that change was possible, that with vision, determination, and heart, even the most entrenched systems could be transformed for the better. The story of Ben Carter, the janitor who became a CEO and changed the face of corporate America, would be told for years to come. It would inspire countless others to believe in the power of integrity, in the value of every worker, and in the possibility of creating businesses that served not just shareholders, but society as a whole. As Ben stepped down from the podium, ready to cut the ribbon on the new foundation building, he knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The work of making the business world more equitable, more sustainable, and more humane was far from over. But with each step, each policy, each life changed for the better, Ben Carter and Reed Industries were proving that it was a goal worth pursuing, and one that was within reach. The Invisible Man had not only stepped into the light, he had become a beacon, illuminating a path toward a brighter, more ethical future for all.